Welcome to Raw Radio.
And we're live.
And we're live. That was very serious. And we're live. That's Thomas's.
Why are you so grumpy?
That's you.
For everybody who's listening to this right now, this is a takeaway, but Gary is grumpy. We should do takeaway from.
That was your. That was your. I don't want to be here. And we're live. And we're live. But I want to be here. So the takeaway, Michael Trasso. Check him out. He's got some really good stuff going on if you're not familiar. And spent a lot of his time wrestling. And he is also a BJJ black belt. But, what I took away mostly was the grind that these wrestlers live with and live through.
Yeah, and before we even get into the grind, I think what's interesting about this that we both had a difficulty kind of to narrowing down what the takeaway from this episode was. And it's not because it's a boring episode, actually the opposite way. It was very technical, if you will, from a perspective of a lot of good information and differences and views culture-wise and dynamic-wise between wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Mike is very versed in both of them, has done both of them for a number of years, a couple of decades. There's a lot of experience in the wrestling high college level, competitive level, and then obviously a black belt in jiu-jitsu, well decorated, well established skill set and its side. But you're right. What was mind blowing to me, or was the one thing that really stuck out to me, was the grind that he had to go through, or wrestlers in general need to go through to achieve the goals in their sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Physically, mentally, what they have to push through, talked about weight cutting. And I think the sport itself, what opened my eyes a little bit is that the sport itself lends itself to that grind. And one of the things I never thought of before is short periods. You don't have any time to waste, right? When it's time to go, you got to go 100%. You got to go full force. You can't pull guard. You can't wait for your opportunity. You can't watch the clock. You got to go full tilt, or things probably aren't going to work out in your favor. And that carries over to every other aspect, I think, of the sport, the training, weight cutting, everything.
It is interesting to have these conversations, even now with you, and then speaking with Mike was very intriguing to me, particularly as an instructor. I see this often: standing on the feet, clock starts, and two individuals facing each other, they take 30, 45, 60 seconds, sometimes a minute and a half before they even engage, going through this body reading exercise, trying to find an opening and all that. And all that comes from our jiu-jitsu laid back culture. And honestly, from the rules that we have put ourselves or surrounded ourselves with in jiu-jitsu. It's by far less aggressive, it's by far less driven and time bound. It's not time. Well, it is, but it's not in the aspect what you are talking about, right? It's not a minute.
Minutes.
Right. 6 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes in, advanced or black belt divisions. It all that gives you a perspective of having more time versus Michael talks about in wrestling. None of them really exist. You have 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it is, very short period of time. And, it's done. It's over.
Yeah. That period's over. You're not going to get it back. Right. So now you got to work twice as hard for the next one.
Yeah, and that's just one of the aspects, right? It really puts in a perspective for me, particularly from a jiu-jitsu perspective. I think we take a lot of things for granted. We sit back and we kind of enjoy the ride, if you will, versus having this a little bit more targeted, a little bit more forward approach, as he was talking about, that exists in wrestling. Part of the grind is the fact that there's only one spot on a team.
Yeah. Your weight division, it's there's only one guy who's going to get that spot. There's not 4 or 5 of you. And so you got to work diligently as hard as you can to earn that spot, and if not, well, then you're moving up or down. And I think 99% of the time you're moving down, right? You're moving down in weight, and all the other things that brings with it, weight cutting, and what that does to you and what it does to you physically, mentally, to get you prepared for, your next competition. And it's incredible.
What do you find as grind in your training? What would you define as grind? And
In BJJ,
yeah,
in
in
what,
jiu-jitsu.
my level,
Yeah.
my level of
Yeah.
jujitsu, what we're
Well, it's
doing
just,
here.
yeah, as you go through your journey, as you go through the motions of learning and discovering things, what do you, well, if somebody asked you is, how is your grind? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? How would you define it?
I think man, it's hard to say. It's hard to equate something in jujitsu with it. Really, I think the grind comes in jujitsu. I think every time you level up a little bit, because you're pushing towards this little goal, and you think, I'm getting better. I'm getting better. I'm gonna, and then you start going to, as a white belt, you start going to open mat at some point, or you advance into a sport class at some point, and then, wow, you start getting it handed to you. Everybody was taking it easy on you before. You're new, right? You get when you get your blue belt, God forbid it's right before an open mat, because then people are now you got to earn some stuff here. We're not giving it to you. And I think every time you level up, you hit a more of a grind type of atmosphere. But then I think it starts dropping down again, right? Unless you're like a high level competitor, or, a competitor. I think when you're just a hobbyist, which is something I wanted to touch on when it comes to the grind of wrestling. But I think when you're just a hobbyist, the grind is very hard to define. I don't think it's a constant thing. And I think that so it's very intermittent. And for me, it's when you take those steps up in competition, and I'm talking just in your own classes, not like going to competitions or tournaments. I'm just talking about like, okay, the higher level guys aren't going to take it as easy on you anymore, so that's what it's been for me.
When you're referring to this grind, are you talking about that people are destroying you or making it harder once you level up? Or is it you trying to step up to the new level that you've been rewarded with?
It's both. I think it's a combination of both, right? You want to be, if you still want to be here, you've got to step up. You got to start working harder. You got to accept it. Your ego has got to accept it. You've got to accept it physically. And then, on the flip side of it, it is the people starting to really put it to you a little bit more. I have always, there's been a few points, things that I can pinpoint where it was certain people, where it was like somebody would come up to me and be like, man, that guy goes hard. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's a sweetheart. He doesn't go hard. And then
sweetheart?
You get that, yeah, he's a sweetheart. And then you get that promotion and it's like, oh, okay. I see what you were talking about. Yeah, because the guy who said that was a higher rank than me, right? Maybe only a couple stripes, been around a little bit longer. And that guy that I thought didn't go hard, well, he just wasn't going hard with me, or as hard, and then it opens your eyes to how hard this can be physically.
Yeah, definitely. Those moments are very humbling. Not only from a perspective of what you know, what you should know, where you want to go, but also just from the perspective of, now you're gaining this role of leadership often, whichever belt you move up to, people look up to you. I think it's all part of that grind and continuous growth as you go through that journey.
Yeah, but I think it's much more immediate in wrestling. And I
Well,
think you know why, and we talked about it, the rule set of the sport,
mhm.
but also, there's no hobbyist wrestler. it doesn't really exist. I wrestle as a hobby. No, you wrestle to compete, whether it's in school,
Right.
right? Or you're on some sort of team somewhere. You're shooting for the Olympics, whatever. It's not, I'm going to go twice a week and have fun. I don't think that exists. If you go twice a week, you're going to get smashed and tossed and brutalized twice a week. Maybe that is fun for some people, but I don't.
Well,
think
I don't
that there's
think,
a
based on
hobby
what
aspect
Michael's
of it.
talking about, I don't think that even exists. And maybe we have some wrestlers listening to this who can correct us here, but I do believe that every wrestler who enters into a club or a training facility scenario, they are probably in some capacity forced into competing. It's just
Mhm.
it's not mandatory, but it's part of the culture. It's just what you do. That's
Yeah.
part of the goal in your training, to compete at some point. And if you don't, you fall off. You stop
Yeah.
training, I think. And at least that's my perception that I got from conversation with Mike. Versus in jiu-jitsu is by far more casual, is not the word. Hobby oriented.
Yeah.
A
For sure.
lot of people do it, because they just want to learn the art, not necessarily to compete. A lot of them do compete. Not everybody competes. Not everybody will be a world champion. Not everybody's going
Right.
to even step on the national stage. So a lot of it is just,
And why do people come through the door? People come through the door at jiu-jitsu, at judo, for self-defense, right? I think people go through the wrestling door, so to speak, for very different reasons.
correct.
It is about, I want to be part of a team, and we're a team here at jiu-jitsu, but it's very different. It's a team that is going to play, compete against other teams. And I think when you look at it that way, it's sink or swim. You're either going to make the team or you're not. So get to the grind, put your nose down. You got to do it or you're off the team, And so I think that's probably the biggest difference, the way I see it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, listen, both of the sports, arts, martial arts, whatever you want to categorize them, they are black and white. They are very different. They have similarities. They have kind of overlapping points, but they are very different. Very different goal in each, and a very different culture in each. Very different approach to training and competition in each. Now, what is important, I think, is that as we were wrapping up the conversation with Michael, is that both can benefit each other in a strong way.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, my thoughts as an instructor, as a coach, is if you want to have a well-rounded game and you're a jiu-jitsu player, you better start wrestling. Like, you should understand at least basics of wrestling. Otherwise, if you ever choose to compete, you might find yourself in front of a wrestler and they might have minimal jiu-jitsu experience, and it's going to
Yep.
be like a freight train coming
Yep.
right through you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, take those similarities, take the differences, learn from both. Because like Michael said, at the same time, that freight train who's trying to come through you, next thing he knows is you slap the guillotine on him. Uh-oh, what is this? And it's all over for him too. So, take the aspects of both that will cross over, and use them both, learn them both. Learn everything you can. Learn judo, my favorite days here on the mat are when a particular wrestler is here, and when Kyle's here, because he's teaching me, and he's teaching me the things that he knows about wrestling. He seems to want, he's a great guy to train with, but he's showing me, hey, do this, don't do that, this is what's going to help you, and I walk away with extra tools in my toolbox.
And that's what it's all about.
Yep, absolutely.
Learning more, figure out more, continuing that journey, and just going
Yep.
through it day by day, continuing the grind.
Yeah. I'm not going to weight cut though.
You know what I would see before we wrap this up? It just hit me right this moment as I was about to say we are done. You know what grind to me means in jiu-jitsu?
What's that?
Showing up every day.
There
I
you
think
go.
a lot of
All right.
people could relate to that. I think that's the difficult part in jiu-jitsu because it is so casual sometimes.
Yeah.
At times, it's just casual is a bad word. It's not reflecting what I'm trying to say. It's very laid back from a culture perspective. Peace, life is good. Let's kind of. It's very social in a way, and showing up sometimes is hard.
Yeah, it's hard to get off the couch. It's hard to, after a long day at work, be like, now I'm going to go.
What did Marcia Cruz said? Sunday football and a beer in a hand versus jiu-jitsu mat open sparring.
It's Thursday night football. He likes Thursday night football. It's the TV, right, and the couch, and sitting on that couch with a beer in your hand rather than you go to jiu-jitsu and he sit on your face. I think that's exactly what he said.
That's right. That's right. I butchered my
well, that'll always stick in my head. Always. Getting up. You're right. Yeah, for sure. Getting up, going, motivating yourself. It's a grind. It's a different grind. I'm not gonna say they're equal. No way would I say that. But it is. It's part of it.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're listening to it, pack your bag right now. Head out to the gym. Head out to the academy. Have a great training. Continue the grind, and be stubborn. Don't quit.
Oh, yeah. Look who's talking. All right. On to the next one.
On to the next one.
All right. Peace.
Later. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Raw Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.